Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar that's titled Put the Humanity Back into Learning, where we're going to talk a little bit about how the know, feel, do framework influences our course design process here at LAPU, as well as how that same framework influences teaching for our students at LAPU. With me today is Callista Dawson. She is one of our amazing and talented learning experience design folks who works with our DSL team on the course creation side. My name is Gordon Jorgensen. I'm one of the assistant deans at LAPU. We appreciate you joining us. Pamela Robinson, I am not even sure where that is, but it looks amazing. But again, welcome. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Callista to get us started.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Gordon. So I'm going to dive into talking about course design and how we use the Know, Feel, Do framework in our course design. So to start off our conversation, I want to ask the group here, how are you feeling about generating ideas when it comes to course design? I want to get an idea of where you're at on that spectrum. And so for me, I would say that when it comes to generating ideas, I'm excited by it. I'm energized by it. It's something I love to do. But I know some people are terrified when it comes to coming up with the new ideas and try to avoid it at all costs. Others might be somewhere in the middle where you struggle to get that idea ball rolling, but you really like growing ideas of your teammates. So go ahead and hop in the chat for me and let me know where you're at on that spectrum. Okay, Shirley loves to generate new ideas. Awesome. Pamela loves it, but depends on if there's a direction or starting point. Okay, yes, I understand that. Yvonne loves to be creative. Me too. Welcome to the club. So I'll just mention that here at LAPU, I'm on a very talented team of people. Gordon mentioned I'm in the digital learning solutions team. And a good portion of my day-to-day work is spent brainstorming, ideating, and prototyping new ideas. So for me, that's really a dream come true because all creative endeavors begin in the same place, which is coming up with new ideas. So our guiding light now in our team is this Know, Feel, Do framework. We apply it to course design by asking ourselves these three questions. What does the user need to know? How do we want them to feel? And what do they need to be able to do? We all know that we have to teach our users new concepts, and we have to assess that they've learned those concepts. And checking those two boxes will usually cover the know and the do. But the most important piece for us is making the experience engaging. And in order to do that, we have to think about how they feel while they're engaging with the content we've created. If we fail to make what we're creating engaging, then we tend to miss that whole point of why we're creating it in the first place. And then we probably won't even achieve our goals of learning retention. If you've attended any of our recent webinars this year, you might have heard us talk about the Know, Feel, Do in other contexts. And so today I want to use this time to really dive into the practical usage of it. And I'm actually going to give you guys an opportunity to practice this with me and then share with you some examples of how we implement it. So with that being said, what does it look like to address the feel? Let's start with asking who here has had a bad experience with online learning. You can go ahead and start typing in the chat if you've got a particularly bad memory from a learning experience that you've had. I can give you some direction by saying, we can think about a time where maybe you had to take a mandatory training course that was administered online, maybe for an HR purpose. I know personally, I've had to take several of those types of courses. And Gordon says calculus too. Yeah, that sounds like maybe it could be not so fun, unless you really like math. Um, Tech difficulties were so bad, I decided to leave the webinar because I could not hear, see, or yeah. Boring content. Yes, exactly. So like I was saying, for my example, an HR course that I had to take, it's one I have to take every year. And some years it's really just sterile slides with lots of text on them, maybe a stock image here or there, and a narrator that's reading the words out that are already on the screen. And they call this interactive because there are next buttons or multiple choice questions, but it's not exactly fun. And so these types of activities tend to be completely focused on the legal requirements of delivering information and assessing that you can choose correct answers on a quiz. Yeah. So thinking of that bad experience that you had, how did you feel before you had to take the course? So in my case with the HR course, I got an email saying this requirement needed to be taken care of. So imagine you're reading that email. How would you feel in that situation, right? You can go ahead and put in the chat how you remember feeling. I can say it was just pure dread for me, like, oh no, not again. I have to take this course again. If you can tap into that emotion, just think of maybe one word that you could use to describe that. It's something you know you have to do. You might be reluctant to do it, hesitant, begrudging even. Now imagine that you're in the course. You already kind of know what to expect. The narrator's now reading the slides to you. You're clicking next, next, next. Or maybe you forgot to click next because you were doing something else and it's asking if you're still paying attention. Go ahead and give me some feel words for while you're in the course. Frustrated, bored, yes, bored, exactly. Some other words I thought of were disengaged, obligated, split focused, because I'm doing other things. Okay, now that you're done with the course, probably a couple hours have gone by. How do you feel now that you've finished the course? I know for me, it was like, okay, great, I got that done. I don't have to worry about this for another year. Pamela says relieved. Yvonne says relieved. Yes, exactly. Glad it's over. Waste of time. Yes. Okay, so you've all taken one of these courses, I can tell. Now let me ask you this question. What if that designer had consciously decided to focus on how you felt before, during, and after you took the course? What if the person making it decided that they didn't want you to be bored, annoyed, inconvenienced? And what if they actually tried to build something that piqued your interest or excited you instead? You're probably wondering how we do this, or at least how we try to do it. So it's actually really easy to get started. Before you design anything, you just have to ask yourself, if I could control how my user feels, how would I want them to feel? And so this is where we're going to have some fun. My favorite way to capture thoughts around this is through visual means. So I like to do some mind mapping. I'm sure that's something most of you are familiar with. And there's lots of free tools out there that you can use. Right now, my favorite tool to use is Canva. It looks really good, it's easy to use, and you can collaborate in real time. And so I am actually going to throw a link in the chat for you. Make sure everyone can see it. Okay, if you click on that, it's going to take you to a Canva whiteboard, and I'll bring it up here so we can all see it too. And we're all going to hop in here together and start putting some ideas on the board. So what I want you to do is find a box that says add an emotion, and just think of an emotion that describes how you want your user to feel. Go ahead and find one and start typing in there. You can feel free to make a mess on this board. We're just going to share ideas right now. And I'm going to start a little timer. I'll give us 3 minutes. Any emotions you can think of. Minute and a half left. See some of you already adding ideas on how to achieve those emotions. That's great. If you have some already, go ahead and add those too. One more minute. I love watching all your cursors fly around the screen. Oh, my timer stopped. Okay. What we're gonna do next, some of you already started, just building upon those emotions with the activities that we would want to use, or not even activities, they could just be elements that you build into the course or the overall experience. So we've got one here for curious. It says, have students predict what is coming next and even have them come up with questions. This one says assignments with contextual feedback and opportunities to grow. That is next to respected and encouraged. So that's cool. Engaged, we've got provide supporting details. That's great. If anybody else has ideas for engaged, you can add them on these blocks over here. Oh, I see, provided supporting details. That might have been there with the template. But I think it also applies. That's funny. Okay, under fun, we've got some stuff here. Add music from YouTube. Use Canva. Memes. Oh yeah, to bring God into the classroom. Yeah, for faith integration, that's great. Videos on my writing channel. Oh, that sounds awesome. What's over here? Able to navigate the course how they want. Yeah, that's big for empowerment, making navigation easy. That's always something good to think about. We've got self-paced activities too. That is a huge key for empowerment, right? Okay, so I added a word over here, capable. And I'm just going to take a minute to ask in the, either if you're in here or in the chat, if you want to add an idea of how we could make a student feel more capable. I think that kind of goes along with empowered. Like, what are some things we can do to make them feel capable? We can give them the resources they need right when they need them, so they're easy to find. We've got show how the resources are applied. Yes, exactly. Bring some more boxes over here for us to play with. Also, there's a shortcut. If you need a box, you can just hit, I think it's R, and a new square will pop up. Little hotkey for you. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see how this activity works to get us going. Some more examples I would give would be for encourage. We can create activities that provide them with encouraging quotes and stuff like that. You'll see that in an example that I have later of how we achieve encouragement. But yeah, curiosity, respect, encouraged, fun, excited. These are all great emotions that we should be striving to achieve in our course design. Some others that I've seen up on the board before are using humor and gamification, competition, and a lot of audio and video elements. These are things that we can utilize. Okay, hopefully you had some fun with that. I'm gonna go ahead and head back over to our slideshow. But you all still have access to that if you have the link, so feel free to play with it tomorrow. Okay, so the top 4 words that I want to pull out, because these are the feel elements that we always try to hit in our designs, are empowered, equipped, excited, and engaged. Yes, I know they all start with E. It's just a funny happenstance. So for empowered, the definition is to make someone stronger and more confident, especially in controlling their life and claiming their rights. Equipped means to prepare someone mentally for a particular situation or task. Excited means to produce a state of increased energy or activity in. And then engaged actually has a lot of definitions, which is probably an indicator of why it's such a difficult thing to achieve. But in this case, I pulled out 3 definitions. So occupy, attract, or involve someone's interest or attention, cause someone to become involved in a conversation or discussion, and establish a meaningful contact or connection with. So these are just the top 4, I would say. And so I'll give you guys some examples of how we try to do that. So for the empowered word, we like to create tons of tutorials and resource hubs to give our students on-demand access to the help that they need, to empower them to answer many of their own questions in real time. For equipped, I've got a couple of things. For this example, we make sure that we provide really clear instructions through all of our courses. And one of the ways that we do that is we create these visual breakdowns, especially for our multi-part assignments. This is so it's super easy for our students to see what it is they're doing and how the dots are connected. And in our visuals, we actually literally connect the dots for them. One thing we also decided to do on an organizational level was we created a mobile app. We wanted our students to be equipped with mobile access to their courses, important resources, and even their peers. And this has probably been our biggest investment in our student experience because we are a 100% online campus. So this tool has become essential. Excited is achieved through our look and feel of our courses. We make sure that our content is very well structured and easy to navigate, but also visually appealing. Another way we tackle excitement is in week 1 of every course, we include a rotating banner, kind of like what I mentioned before. It has an encouraging quote or a motivational thought, and it refreshes every time they come to the page with a new thought or quote. Following that is a what's in it for you section. And that's where, again, we connect the dots for them up front. I call that front loading. We let them know what's coming, and we let them know why it's important for them specifically. And then I want to just mention engagement, of course. So we defined it already in several ways, but how do we check that box in our online asynchronous courses? Gordon is going to speak on facilitation perspective for engagement strategies, but for me as a media designer, I lean heavily on creating activities and media for learners to interact with. At their core, every online course is simply words on a page. Some people really enjoy reading, but the science shows that even those people can only retain a small amount of what they read. So our goal is to move that student away from passive learning and into active learning. So I would like to spend a minute showing you our instructional media gallery. We created this gallery to just kind of give a brief overview of the types of media that we create. So in our courses, you will find PDFs that are accessible. They may be interactive as well. We like to create case studies from scratch for our courses so that they're extremely applicable and designed with our LAPU student in mind. And we do a lot of infographics as well, just trying to present things in a visual, engaging way. Another thing that we've started doing is podcasts. So we have a pretty decent sized library of podcast episodes now. Season 1 of it was focused on learning and content creation, and the second season was focused on leadership. And our president, John Reynolds, was the spearhead on that. For video, we like to create storytelling videos that are just taking real world examples and making them into either animations or visual storytelling. And another subcategory of video we call explanations. So these are animated, short, focused explanations of a narrow topic. And they're very fun to make and watch. We also like to use comic strips to tell stories. Usually we'll pull stories from our subject matter experts and then turn those into clickable comic strips. We will sometimes, when it's really applicable to the subject, to have a simulation, we'll build a game that they can play. So this one was on bias in leadership. So you get to pick a mentor and you have to think through why you chose, or a mentee, you're the mentor. So you get to choose from a list of employees who you want to mentor and why. And then this one was for an art class where you actually get to assist the museum curator and decide which galleries to put the art in based on their themes. So very fun. We also have games where there's multiple choice with multiple outcomes, and their results will depend on whether or not they took a certain path within the branching scenario. So those types of activities are really good to use, especially for a concept like this one, organizational culture. There's multiple different cultures an organization could have, so they can determine which one theirs is. It's kind of like a personality test in that sense, but they get a custom outcome based on their input. And we also use widgets just to display information in more visual ways, flashcards, hotspots, video assessments. We just try to find as many fun ways as possible to present the material so that it's more engaging. And then another thing to mention is that our really talented team has won several awards. And I'll make sure you all have access to this gallery so you can go through it at your own pace later. But I encourage you to come and check out the things that we've made and see why they won awards. All right. There's a QR code that'll take you there if you want to scan it now. Otherwise, we'll get you that link in the chat later. All right, Gordon, I think that's it for me. You're up.
Thank you, Callista, for sharing how we approach course design and creation at LAPU. As someone who's been around for quite a while, I have to say that the contributions to her team have really made our courses come alive in the last few years. And our students are better for it, to be honest. It's really amazing what they are able to produce for our students when it comes to the course content. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. So as we dive into this next part about teaching, I'd like you to think about this question. Who was your favorite teacher? You can go all the way back to elementary school if you want. Doesn't matter to me, but my guess is you've probably already thought about that person. So what I'd like you to do is just for now, keep that teacher's name in the back of your mind, and we'll come back to that a little bit later in the presentation. As Callista has shared, at LAPU, our courses are created by collaborative teams and they're owned by the university. So this does have an impact on how we teach or facilitate the courses. How we teach asynchronous online courses also aligns well with the know, feel, and do framework. And when it comes to the know, we acknowledge that all of the professors that we hire are experts in their subject matter field. Clearly, you need to know what you're teaching. And so that's a given. But one of the things that's also important to us as we recruit new faculty is we're always looking for people who have experience connected to the professions that they might be teaching in. For example, if we are trying to hire instructors in our business management or leadership programs, we clearly want them to have educational pedigrees, but we also want them to have business and leadership experience in their own professional lives. If we're hiring somebody to teach education courses in a credential program, we again want people who've been in K-12 public education so that they can use their experience to connect our students to the content in the courses. Let's excuse me, I've got a slide. There we go. So how we approach the know, I want you to think about how you went through college, how I went through college, and most of us probably went through a more traditional pedagogical approach where the assumption is the students that show up are a bit of a blank slate or a dry sponge. They don't know much, if anything, when they begin the course. And in this model, the instructor is the only one with the knowledge and thus then provides or fills up the soaking of the sponge so that the students learn something. And we kind of around here lovingly refer to this as the sage on the stage model. But at LAPU, we support an andragogical approach where andragogy sees the instructor as more of a facilitator of the course content that has been created by this small team of experts, sometimes including the instructors. We refer to this as more of the guide on the side model. So what I'd like to do is take a look at some of the assumptions related to andragogy, which is the science and practice of adult learning. This is based on, it has its foundation in Malcolm Knowles' work, who was one of the early pioneers in adult learning and adult education. Experience is very important. Adults learn experientially, meaning that they learn best when they can make connections between their firsthand experience and the content that's being, excuse me, being taught. Adult learners also want to have responsibility for their own learning, this idea of self-concept. They thrive in independent learning and training scenarios, and mostly they value being seen as capable and self-directed learners. Excuse me. Readiness to learn tells us that adults are attracted to learning most when they see clear objectives and clear expectations. They don't like trying to guess what's happening. Orientation to learning tells us that adults learn best when the topic is of immediate value. Can they take what they're learning in your business management course to work with them and try it out? These are some of the questions that roll around in the minds of our adult students. In an education course, can they take what they're learning in that course and apply it or try it in their student teaching fieldwork experience that they're doing? And finally, adults are mostly motivated by internal personal factors rather than external pressures. Getting back to that HR course, we typically don't like being told, well, you just have to do this because we say you have to do it, right? This is one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, Stephen Brookfield. At LAPU, we create and provide the course content. Everything is provided for the instructor. So it's a different experience for some if they've had previous higher ed experience. So how can we as instructors connect these assumptions about adult learning to our practices as we teach classes? I'd like to share some of the things that we try to focus on as instructors at LAPU. Admittedly, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's kind of some of the high points that we typically talk about when we discuss what it takes to be a good and successful instructor for LAPU in our model. My first question as assistant dean is, are you passionate about your subject matter? I think the last thing a student wants is to have an instructor that doesn't seem excited about what they're teaching. Are you able to make sure that everyone is clear in your course when it comes to the expectations each week, whether that's a discussion prompt or an assignment instruction? Are you able to make sure that everyone is clear? Can you offer suggestions on how to succeed in the course? Most of the time, our instructors here at LAPU will teach similar or same courses over and over, session after session. So you learn secrets of the course. You learn the things that will help students be more successful. So do you use reminders, emails, or announcements that help them succeed in the course? Do you actively engage in the discussions with them? Are you able to model what a good initial response to the prompt looks like? Are you providing detailed and quality feedback on their work when you're doing your grading? Or are you just checking rubric boxes and giving scores? How do you encourage students to go deeper in the discussion by asking more challenging questions? I think for many of us in the discussion parts of the course, it's really frustrating to see over and over, that's a great response. That's a really good response. That's a great response. And so as instructors, we need to model how to get away from that and encourage our students to go deeper. Are you able to draw out the student's own experience? Do you invite them to share their experiences when you're talking with them in discussions and back and forth? To me, this is probably one of the most valuable things that I can bring to the discussions on a week in and week out basis is when I can share experiences from my own professional life. I mainly teach math courses that are part of our liberal studies degree, which is a teaching preparation degree. And so I love to tell them about my early experience as a teacher and how bad I was, to be honest. You know, we all remember those days when we first started something. And one of my favorite stories that I tell students that seem to be struggling with, I don't know how I'm going to be a good teacher. When I first started teaching, I was what was called a traveling teacher, which meant I had no classroom of my own. I worked at a middle school where the students would go from one class to another each period. And so I would go from one classroom to another where that particular teacher was on their professional conference period. So they would leave and I would move in with my little cart full of materials and extra copies of textbooks and all the things that you had to drag around to be part of a classroom. And two of the courses I taught that first year were bilingual world history classes, and the students were amazing. They were probably some of my most favorite students of all time. And they started calling me paletero. And not being very well versed in Spanish at the time, I had no idea what the word meant. So finally, after it kept repeating and repeating, I asked one of the bilingual instructional aides, Ms. Camargo, what is this paletero word? What is it? She started laughing. And she said, they're calling you the ice cream man because you have a cart that you carry around all around the school. And so I thought to myself, I could be offended by that, or I could embrace it. And so later on, a couple days after that, I went shopping and found a little bell that you put on the handlebars of a bicycle that rings, jing, jing, which is what the paletero rings when he's walking around the neighborhood selling ice cream. And I put it on my cart. And so I would ring that bell when I was walking from classroom to classroom. And it had nothing to do with what I was teaching the kids, but it had everything to do with me connecting with them. It was one of the first aha moments I had as a teacher of the importance of connecting with my students. And we had a great time. So let me ask you this and invite you to share in the chat. How do you want your students to feel when they're in your course? Take a couple minutes to add to the chat if you don't mind. How do you want your students to feel when they're in your course? Valued, known, safe, important, sense of belonging, safe to share, welcome and connected. Awesome answers, thank you. Safe enough to share and contribute again. Curious enough to ask questions, motivated, respected. And if I were adding, I would add respected, valued, engaged, encouraged, energized, that we're partners in their learning. So how do we do these things? For me, when I'm teaching a class, you know, we obviously put in welcome messages and tell a little bit about ourselves. We even create a video introduction of ourselves, which I think is important. I think it's important for the students to see what we look like, to hear what we sound like, to help them see that it's really a live person on the other end of this online course. One of the things that I've always done that sometimes seems a little bit blasphemous to some is I give my personal cell phone to all of my students in the welcome message. And I do that mainly because I do that by sending them all a text message at the beginning of the course. And I've been doing this for years now, since I first started in higher ed back in 2005. And the reason why is because the worst thing I can think of is one of my students feeling stranded, like they don't know what to do about something in my class and not being able to get even the most simple question answered. And so that's why I give out my personal cell. It doesn't bother me. And they do text me all during the day, all hours of the night. But I just tell them in that initial communication, you know, I might not answer you right away, but I promise I will answer you within 24 hours. And most of the time it's a lot faster than that. But I want them to know that I'm available to them. That's super important to me. If you choose to go that far, I obviously I would leave that up to any instructor. I wouldn't say that you have to do that, but to me, it builds a little bit more relationship. It gets to helping them feel better about the instructor teaching their course. Another question I have is, what kind of empathy do we have for a student when some kind of life event happens? I think in traditional higher ed, the higher ed that maybe most of us went through as students, if something happened in life, or your car broke down, or you got into an accident, or something crazy happened at work, most of our instructors back in those days would tell us, oh, too bad, so sad. You got to figure it out. Good luck with that, right? And I think as adult learners and adult educators, we need to take a different approach to that. I think there's probably empathy is probably one of the top 5 things I feel like I need to show my students on a regular basis, because the reality is our students are busy. You know, they're adults for the most part. They're working full time, many of them. They're managing families, husbands, wives, kids, significant others, and a myriad of other social activities that they're involved in. And school is one of the items that's already on a very full plate, right? And so when these things happen, I earned the title of Marshmallow Man early in the School of Adult and Professional Studies when I first started in higher ed. And I was a little offended at the beginning, being called the Marshmallow Man. But looking back, you know, it's been about 18 and a half years now that I've been working with adult learners. There have been far more amazing stories of how I've been able to come alongside a student and get them through something than there have been situations where I feel like, oh, that student just used me. I got taken, right? And so I would just encourage you to, if at all possible, show empathy when certain crazy events happen in the lives of our students. Earlier, Clarissa talked about the 4 E's. So I'd like to share a little bit about how we might focus on the 4 E's from an instructional point of view. The first is equipped. Are we clarifying expectations to ensure that the students are well prepared for the activities and assignments in the course? Are we able to help students make connections and be excited about the content? Admittedly, sometimes when I'm teaching math classes, it's hard to get them excited about algebra. But it doesn't mean that I don't try to be excited about the content, because one of the things I've learned is that I can motivate them when I share my experiences with algebra. And so I try to do that. Empowered, when our students make connections between the course content and their academic goals, they become empowered. Helping students own their learning and become more independent is a huge goal for us at LAP with our students. And then finally, engaged. How do we welcome students into greater engagement? This is really probably one of the most challenging aspects of what we do. In the discussions, one of the things that I like to do is I like to call and respond to the ones that I identify, usually after the first or second week, are the most introverted, the ones who wait until almost the deadline to post. I will wait for them so I can respond to them. You know, there are always those early birds that are on top of it, but I tend to focus a little bit more of my attention on the late posters. And then the other thing that I try to do is I really try to make as many personal connections with students as possible, because to me, that's the secret of engagement. It kind of reminds me of a favorite quote from President Theodore Roosevelt. Hopefully I can remember how it goes. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. That's always been an important thing for me as an instructor. Sorry about that. I would say when our efforts in the know and feel are aligned, the do is most often the result. quick little story about a student I had in my math classes. We'll call her Melissa. That's not her real name, but she was in the first of the two math courses, Math 301. In the welcome posts, she said she'd never been good at math and had more than one teacher in her life tell her that she would never be good at math. That's not a good place to start from. But I also found out she was an instructional aide at a local school where she was an aide in an elementary classroom and wanted to become a teacher. So I shared some of my experiences with her when I used to be a principal about instructional aides. I had a couple instructional aides at my school site that were better than probably 2/3 of my teachers when it came to all the things that you look for in a good teacher. The only difference between them and my certificated teachers is they just didn't have the degree or the credentials, but they were amazing with kids. And so I told her some of those stories about some of those. And, Melissa, she had a hard time the first couple of weeks. I remember doing Google Meets with her so she could share her screen and I could help her with homework problems. I would send her texts of encouragement. Hey, just wanted to see how you're doing. How's the week going so far? And I also prayed for her. That's a huge thing for me. I love to pray for my students when I'm teaching classes. And at the end of that class, Melissa squeaked out a C. But guess what? It was the first time in her academic career that she had passed a math class the first time. And it kind of gets me a little emotional. I apologize for that. But the amazing thing was she went into the next course, the next session, which is Math 302. And she was like a monarch butterfly in that class. She was one of the first to post every week. She was the cheerleader to other students when she wrote her peer responses to the other people in her class. She would regularly in the discussions offer to help people with homework, even though she probably was not going to be very good at it. But she just had this metamorphosis. And I think when I think back on that, it had so much to do with how the course was created and how we teach our students at LAPU. She's a full-time special education teacher now. We even still keep in contact, even though she probably was in my class, well, I'd say at least 7 or 8 years ago. It's been a long time since she was in the class, but it was awesome to see the impact of what we're trying to do here. And I share this story with you really mostly as a challenge. When we get to know our students and build relationship with them, truly amazing transformation can take place. So just a couple of concluding thoughts on the do. Obviously, as instructors, our goal is to facilitate learning and help students continually make these connections. And one of the biggest things we can do is clarify the coursework and the assignments and give those hints that they need to be successful. I think we do an amazing job at creating clear and well-constructed assignments and discussion prompts, but there are always a few students along the way who still struggle or don't seem to connect somehow. And being able to clarify is huge to them. Can we help them understand how the course fits into their greater degree goals? Can we help them understand how the course that I'm teaching connects to future courses? Just a while back, maybe a little over a year ago, good fortune came my way and I hired a new English instructor, Professor Ho. I think she might even be here. So shout out for you. I'm going to embarrass you a little. Yvonne does so much more for her students when she's teaching our courses. She has regular scheduled live check-ins where she invites the students to in-person meetings which are not required, but she does that because she wants to connect with our students. She produces all kinds of extra helps for students because she wants them to become better writers. And she understands that when she's teaching composition, English 101, she knows that that course is going to help them be more successful in all the rest of the courses that they take at LAPU, because we know that most of our assessment is writing dependent in most of our courses. And she really goes out of her way to provide all these extra things for students that are not part of the class. And so it's just amazing to see. And then finally, what personal and professional experiences can you share with your students that will help them learn and succeed? It's super important for them to hear from us as instructors what our experiences have been like, because it helps them see the goals that are in front of them. So let's go back to that initial question about who your favorite teacher was. If you wouldn't mind, share a couple of characteristics in the chat about that teacher. As you're sharing, when I think about that person, his name is it's formally Dr. J. Reed. He was one of the instructors in my Master's of Education Administration program. He wouldn't let us call him Dr. Reed, which I thought was kind of peculiar because he was the first college professor that had ever said that to us, said that to a class that I was in. And the reason he gave for that was because he told us, I want you to see me as a colleague. I want you to see me as a partner in what we're going to do in this class. And a couple of things like that I remember vividly about him was trying to teach us the importance of valuing the people that we were responsible for. We were all aspiring principals, assistant principals. And he would tell us over and over, if you don't value the people that you're responsible for, even the ones that are not good at their job, your life is going to be full of lots of frustration. Find ways to value the people that you're responsible for and thank them for what they do. These are awesome responses: kind, clear, positive feedback, supportive, funny, a lot of fun, prayed for me, asked questions about my goals. Thank you for all those responses. I really appreciate those. So thank you for letting us share with you how the No Feel Do framework impacts course development and teaching at LAPU. My hope is that you'll be able to take at least one or two nuggets away from this, or affirmations about things that you already know works well with adult learners and online programs as you continue to serve in your role as an online instructor. So Callista is going to share just a couple more things, and we'll have a short time of Q&A if anyone wants to throw any questions out there.
Yeah, if you have questions, go ahead and start putting them in the chat. We wanted to leave you with this quote from Maya Angelou, just because I think it sums up so well what we're talking about today. And she says, at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did. They'll remember how you made them feel. And that's really a quote that keeps me focused on the feel and being an ambassador for empathy on our team. So hopefully that will stick with you as well. Again, if you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. We've got about 5 minutes left. And if you don't have any questions, I have a question for everyone else. Like, if you are currently doing this and addressing the feel in what you do, I'd love to hear how you're doing that and what it looks like for you. And if not, what are some ways you can see this being helpful for you in the future? All right, we do have a question from Yvonne. What video programs do I need to learn to make animated comic strip videos or storytelling videos? Do you use Doodly? So we use a couple different things. Several of my team members use a program called Beyond. It really makes the animation process very simple. I have a background in animation. So I use more professional tools like Adobe After Effects or Character Animator. They have a lot of different tools that can be used. My new favorite toy is Canva for video creation. They are still iterating the capabilities for video as far as animation is concerned, but those storytelling videos with like stock video, those are really easy to make in Canva. And I am excited to see what they're adding in as far as animation tools go. So I would stay tuned on what Canva is bringing to the table. But Beyond is a very good tool as well. Yvonne, for AI, do you mean Adobe Illustrator or do you mean like artificial intelligence? Because AI means several things in my world. I'll let you clarify on that. Shirley says, how does an instructor add extra materials? Do you want to tackle that one, Gordon?
Yeah, if I'm assuming you might be talking about like an article or some type of PDF or document or something like that. I think the easiest way would be to attach it in a discussion. Obviously, you could also email it to the students. You could put it in the course announcements. I found that most of the time, if I have an article to share or something like that, that's like one of the things that I share when the students, they actually do a writing assignment in one of my math classes. I will attach a pre-formatted title page and Word doc so that they don't have to worry about which font, what size, what are the margins, where do things go. I'll just attach that in my announcement about the particular essay and invite them to use that template so that they don't have to hassle with all the nitpicky things when it comes to formatting.
All right, we've got 2 minutes left and I do have a couple of things I want to share with you guys before we go. The first thing is these are some links to resources that are available to you if you should need them. In my department, we have a YouTube channel and an OER resource group where we're uploading the things that we make. They are free for people to use in their courses if they find something that they like in there, and you are more than welcome to take a look at that. Another thing I wanted to share is we are hosting next month a Canva crash course for creating video. Like I mentioned earlier, we've been using it a lot lately. And so we wanted to do a workshop. It's a 3-hour workshop that starts with more of the theory behind how we do it, and then a live demo and workshop where we can work side by side together. And I'll even take a look at what you're working on and give you tips and tricks right there live in the session on how to make it better. So feel free to register for that. I'd love to see you there. And the last thing is our recently launched CBE program, the Masters of Science in Instructional Design and Technology. This is a degree that costs about $10,000 and takes about 16 months to complete. And it is all self-paced, which is awesome. And we're really excited about it. And so if you'd like to know more, feel free to reach out. You can email us at msidt@lapu.edu. And if it's not something you need for yourself, feel free to share it with someone you know who could benefit from it. And I think that's all I have for today. How about you, Gordon?
Yeah, I think that's it. Just want to say thank you for everyone who joined in with us. We sure appreciate your attendance. Hope you all have a great rest of your day and the rest of your week. Blessings to you all.
Bye.